Hello everybody, welcome to another Gwarzalez Magic. It's Adrian. Today I am actually going to be doing a little video series on the Tempered Steel build of Affinity for a Rogue Deck Builder. So if you're on their site, great. You should have gotten this from the article. If you're on my YouTube page, also great. I will include the link to the article in the About section. So getting into the deck here, Tempered Steel is an interesting card. Basically what it is, let's go ahead and scroll down to it, is it's an anthem for your artifact creatures. So what this deck has the potential to do is to make all of your 0-drops and your man lands big. And it's good because, like I write, they need enchantment removal, and there's really not a lot of great enchantment removal in Modern. And the stuff that is, it's not very heavily played. So it doesn't die to Bolt or Doomblade, and board sweeps don't get rid of it, and it just pumps your whole team. And essentially gives all of your creatures in the late game double strike. Or, +1, because it makes all of your 1/1s 3/3s. So it's kind of hard to deal with for the opponent, but what we sort of trade for in that is it's a little bit harder to cast than some of the other Affinity cards, like Master of Ethereum or Steel Overseer. But if you're playing Affinity in your meta and there's a lot of artifact hate, I would suggest trying out Tempered Steel. It really helps shore up our bad matchups, particularly against Stony Silence, Kataki War's Wage, and Lingering Souls. Because the problem with tokens is that most of our guys are X and 1s, and they can just chump block all day, and we end up spending 4 cards versus 1 card, 1 for each spirit token to really get rid of it. So I would recommend trying it out. It's also a lot more budget. I'm only running 1 Steel Overseer. So if this list interests you, try it out. It's great. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've been playing with it for a long time. So let's get into the deck here. 4 of each man land. I feel like that's pretty standard. And it gets even better in this deck when they can become 3/3s. 4 Darksteel Citadels to help our best draws. 3 Glimmer Voids. And it was actually with this deck that I first started playing the 2 basics. I really like playing 2 basics over 4 Glimmer Voids because it makes it a lot easier. It makes us a lot less dead to Path and Ghost Quarter, where we can normally only get 1 basic. And in this particular build, I find that to be very helpful because Tempered Steel at 2 white, like I said, is a little hard to cast. And even though it doesn't tap for any color, just the fact that our opponent's paths help us out that much more can really give this deck a little bit of extra oomph if we need it. Moving to some of the spells, we're able to play 4 Memnites. And in fact, we kind of, really incentivize 2 with the Tempered Steel because they're 3/3s. But we also kind of need to again, to hit the double white, and that really combos well with our Mox Opal and Springleaf Drum. But having access to the 2 additional 0-drops can make those colored mana hands a lot more efficient, or a lot better. 4 Mox Opals, 4 Ornithopters, the fast mana package. 4 Signal Pests, one of our good evasive creatures that pumps the whole team, is a 2/3 with Tempered Steel, an unblockable 2/3 essentially, and is great. 4 Springleaf Drums. So this is also where I started playing Dispatch a lot. I like Dispatch. It sort of suffers from the fact that it can't dome the opponent like a Galvanic Blast can, but it's very good for answering a lot of the big threats that we don't really have spells to deal with, namely Tarmogoyf and Siege Rhino and Tassiger and Gurmaging. Like, those are the 4 cards that come to mind that have 5 toughness, or, in Goyf's case, sometimes 5, but are generally hard to deal with the Galvanic Blast. So what we sacrifice in direct damage, we make up in the fact that we can deal with a much wider variety of creatures. It also gets around indestructible creatures if that ever comes up. So, if someone's playing like the Insol version of Affinity and they Insol up a Darksteel Citadel, we have a way of getting rid of it. We have 4 Archon Ravagers, great card. Goes well with our 4 Cranial Platings. These are our 2 biggest threats. They're what our opponent has to watch out for, as with any Affinity list, as they can end the game very quickly. I also have begun to play 2 Spell Skites, and if you follow along with me, that's something that I really love to start doing. I've seen a lot of other people doing it as well. It's very good against Twin and Burn and Infect and some other decks that maybe the matchup's not really that great, but it's hardly ever bad to draw into a Spell Skite in Modern. So I would highly recommend getting them. They go in pretty much every deck, at least as a sideboard card. So yeah, it's a great card. It's one of my favorite utility cards. I'm only playing the 1 of Steel Overseer, and that's because sometimes you draw him and he's great, There are a lot of games where you play him and the opponent just bolts him, but the games that he gets going, he's almost unbeatable for a lot of decks, because he can, if you have 3 creatures on the board, he immediately adds 3 power to your team. Well, I guess most kind of 2, but he helps our, because you're not attacking with him, but he helps our man lands in much the same way Tempered Steel does. He just makes everything bigger. Playing 4 Vault Scourges, one of our best evasive creatures. The lifelink is almost always relevant. There are some matchups where it's not, but by and large, life is good. 4 Etched Champions, because with Tempered Steel, he's an unblockable 4/4. And because we're running Tempered Steel, we have to focus a lot more on white, especially in the main, so we're not running Master of Ethereum or Thoughtcast. And I actually don't really like Thoughtcast that much. I think it had its moment, but I think that there are just better cards you can play now. You know, if you're playing Thoughtcast, I would encourage you to instead play more Steel Overseers, more Etched Champions, more Master of Ethereums, a 1 of Welling Jar, and basically almost anything else over Thoughtcast. I just personally don't like the card very much. Feel free to counteract me in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong. I would love to know if you're a big proponent of Thoughtcast, why you like the card. So going to the board, we have 1 of Grafdigger's Cage. I think having a Miser Cage is pretty good in most matchups. Also, the sort of the fun thing about Affinity is that your sideboard is very customizable. It varies a lot from player to player. I'm actually thinking about adding a choke or 2 in, just because of all the blue decks in my local meta. But I'd be willing to try it on Moto too. We get 2 additional dispatches, which function the same way as those dispatches. 2 Thought Seizes for disrupting combos. 2 Galvanic Blasts, just in case. I like having access to a couple of direct damage spells in the board, just in case we need to bring them in for some reason. 1 Torpor Orb to stop with Twin, Bloom Titan, anything with ETB. And since we're in white, we also get to run cards like Ethersworn Canonist, which is very good against Storm, Infect, and Eggs. And I played against an Eggs deck recently, and that was enough to make me go ahead and bring it in. I know that sounds silly, but I think there are certain matchups where you do want access. Well, I guess this is not an artifact spell, so it doesn't help at all against Eggs. But there are definitely some matchups, like Storm and Infect, where it is relevant. I'm also playing a 1 of Rest in Peace. Although it is a Nombo with Arcbound Ravager, it's a good card to have around against any graveyard shenanigans. So I'm just trying it out. 3 Ancient Grudges, great in the mirror, great versus Tron. Whip Flare, very good against tokens and Infect. And Dismember, just when you need the extra kill spell. Alright, so that's the deck tech. Let's go ahead and get into some games and see how it does. Alright, so here we are on our first match. We're on the draw, but this hand is pretty good. Our opponent is mulliganed. But I like Darksteel, Springleaf, Midnight. Ooh, red-black, huh? Could be Grixis, could be Burn, maybe? Ooh, I almost clicked through that. Cranial was an excellent draw here. That's not what I want to cast. So we're just going to go ahead and play Midnight and Vault Scourge. The next turn, depending on what my opponent does, we can either slam the Cranial, or we can go ahead and play Spellskite or Etched. Leaving back a red, that makes me want to go ahead and play Spellskite. Arcbound's not bad either. We've had very good draw this game. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and actually play Etched Champion, because that's going to be a lot harder for my opponent to answer. And since he passed priority, that makes me think that maybe he just didn't have anything. Yeah, I feel like he would have bolted me into turn there if he did. Well, he's bringing in all his lands in tap. That's not good for him, certainly. Another Arcbound, but I'm going to go ahead and play the Cranial. Quick to the Etched. I'll be attacking my opponent for 9. So this is just one of the matchups where Etched shines. If my opponent's on burn, it's basically unbeatable for him. And he conceded, so just a tough matchup, maybe. Don't really know what my opponent is on. I want to say burn, based on what he was showing me. I don't really have a sideboard against burn. I suppose Ethersworn kind of counts. because he can't burn me more than once a turn. Maybe we'll go ahead and shave the... No, I don't really like shaving those. So we'll shave up plains. Alright, let's try this out. So unfortunately, we were not able to play any Tempered Steels that game, and I don't know if I went over this in the deck tech, but here's one actually. Although this hand is unkeepable because there's no lands in it. But Tempered Steel, I was originally playing 4, and then I went down to 2 because I was getting a lot of hands where I was unable to cast it. This hand's not great, but we'll go ahead and keep it. It has access to colored mana if we draw the Tempered Steel. And so I was just having a lot of games where I was drawing too many Tempered Steels and was unable to cast them, and it was just really sad. Okay, this is actually that I do like drawing the Signal Pest there. I'll get to swarm the board, Affinity style. Yeah, that's a pretty good for turn 1 for Affinity. I'm hopeful we get some games where I'm able to showcase the Tempered Steel, though. My opponent missed a land drop. That's not good for him. We draw a Dispatch, just in case, I suppose. Now, if my opponent has a board wipe, I will be very sad, although missing a land drop makes me think he probably does not, or at least will not for a while. And we've got a decent little clock here. We have him on a 3-turn clock. And he misses another land drop. Maybe he's discarding, actually. Maybe that's his intent. Yeah, maybe he's going to Goryo's Vengeance me, but I have a Dispatch, so I'm not too worried about that. Maybe this is the Goryo deck. Yeah, maybe he's going to try on Goryo's Vengeance next turn, in which case I do have access to a bunch of good graveyard hate. And again, the Dispatch here is much better than the Galvanic Blast would be. I would be unable to kill my opponent, although I would be able to prevent him from Gristle Branding, because I'd be able to knock him down to 6 here. He's tanking, perhaps wondering if I have some sort of path. Maybe he's just not going to do anything. Well, he has 2 turns to try and pull something out of the hat here. Through the Breach. Okay, Tempered Steel. Awesome. We get to actually play it, and I think we'll win this turn. I wouldn't be surprised if he just went ahead and conceded to it. Oh, he doesn't. Okay, good. We get an attack in. But yeah, that's going to be lethal, I'm pretty sure. So that's the power of a top deck Tempered Steel. If that had been a Steel Overseer, I would have been unable to do anything. What's this? Manamorphose, huh? Is Goryo's an instant? I probably should have gone ahead and played the other Mox Opal pre-combat, just in case if something crazy happened. Okay, destroy target artifact, not the end of the world. So we don't win this turn. But I'm very happy that we have the... So also, that's again, if I had not had the... I want to keep the untapped Mox Opal. If I had not had the Tempered Steel here, this would have... I wouldn't have been able to win, essentially, because he would have blown up my only real clock, which was the Signal Pest supporting the rest of the team. Yeah, my opponent decides to go ahead and pack it in. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next game.